Thanks for joining me for a Kick Up the Arts. I am Nicola Meehan, and this week I'm hearing from two terrific writers whose latest books are perfect for cosy feel-good reading over the next few weeks and beyond. Jenny Colgan's a best-selling author whose latest, The Secret Christmas Library, follows accidental book detective Mirren, and Jamie, who's desperately trying to do his best on a crumbling family estate in the Highlands. It's a snowed-in, fired-up celebration of family, secrets, ancient novels, dogs, adventures, mysteries, castles, and devastatingly handsome men. We need all that. Andrew Meehan, meanwhile, has worked for the Irish Film Board and teaches creative writing at Strathclyde University. His books include the wonderful One Star Awake and The Mystery of Love. And his latest, Best Friends, sees 70-somethings Ray and June falling into ways of life and love that they never thought possible via books and bikes and honeybees and the wonder of hedges, knees and surprises. You can catch Jenny and Andrew at St Andrew's Book Festival in London's St Columba's Church, incidentally, at the end of November. I'm also going to be there chatting with Irvin Welsh and John Niven together, and we'll be there on Saturday night. That's November the 29th, 8pm. And before that, at tea time, I'm in conversation with Claire Mitchell and Zoe Venditose, aka the Witches of Scotland, about their publishing phenomenon, How to Kill a Witch. For now, though, to a bright and frosty Edinburgh morning with Jenny Colgan and Andrew Meehan and piping hot coffee and excellent pastries to talk about life, love, getting older, memory and expectations, winter's nights and travellers. And Italo Calvino gets a seasonal look in too. So first of all, before we chat about some of the characters and adventures they have, let us get a sense of what unfolds and who we meet in these two wonderful books. And we'll chat about some of the shared themes, because there are quite a few. Feeling alone, not feeling alone, women called June, dalliances with London, and the formative roles of pineapples. I didn't see that one coming in both books, and we'll come to that. Andrew Meehan, you look shocked.
I wrote my book, and I can't remember what's in it.
We'll come to that. Anyway, first of all, what drew you, Andrew, towards June and Ray and the lives and the loves that you explore in Best Friends?
Well, for people who don't know the book, it's a book about love in later life, and I'm getting there. All going well, I'm getting there, and it's a sort of a fascination for me, later life, and a fear for me as well. So I wanted to sort of experience what it would be like, and the book is set in Dublin, but the book began in Glasgow, where I live, and I saw. There was an older gentleman who used to be around my neighbourhood in Queen's Park, and he'd cycle a Boney 5-speed racer, and I used to see him in the local coffee shop, the local Italian coffee shop, ordering his coffee in Italian so he could have more of the chats with the staff, and the staff would kind of cluck around him. And I thought, oh, he's nice. And I wanted to sort of, I wouldn't mind giving him a love story. And then, not immediately afterwards, but then around the corner, I saw a woman she takes out the bins an awful lot. Yeah. And I realised that she was a cleaner for the people, like a lot of the flats nearby. And I thought maybe in this fictional world of writing books, maybe they would like to meet each other. So I put them in a love story.
And what's lovely about that is, they're just going about their business very much as June and Ray are, not even really aware that they're being observed, maybe even feeling a bit invisible. But no one really is. No one,
well, we all are to an extent, and that visibility and invisibility is a real theme in the book as well. But I really wanted to, and I have a feeling that Jenny might have something to say about this too, but these characters, Ray and June, they don't know they're in a love story. They don't necessarily believe that love is for them. They're at the other end of expectations. They're at the other end of hope. Whatever loves they've had in their life have been sort of been and gone and have been signed off on. So they're done with all that. Yeah. So it's quite a slow burn in the sense that it creeps up on them because they don't really recognise the signs. And quite often in love stories, people behave as if they're in a love story because they know, this is the meet cute, this is the first kiss, these are all the things we should be doing. But they're sort of unawares and they're a bit slow in the uptake. So the reader goes, listen, you two, you're in a love story. You need to start behaving like you are. And they don't really get the memo until a bit later on.
Have you told the real people?
I haven't.
You must be a wee bit tempted.
As soon as I saw the guy in the coffee shop, and I never met and I've never met either of them. I took them and put them somewhere and made them fiction. So I wondered, was I being, I didn't want to say, hey, you inspired the book, because they would go and perhaps read it and not find themselves in it. Because
no, nobody ever does. Yeah, no, that's true. Or everyone always gets it wrong.
No, but I was very tempted, because I know the guy to see, and I'd see him around, and he's quite physically distinctive. But
what about just introducing them?
I know.
Maybe.
I'm with you, Jenny. Yeah.
No, it hadn't occurred to me. Well, I actually don't live in that neighbourhood anymore, so I don't see him around.
I'm going to look.
That's even better. You've got plausible deniability. It all turns to crap.
So in a way, it is quite ghoulish. You see somebody being vulnerable. You go, okay, I'm going to go and spend all my time writing a book about it and putting it out into the world. So that's what I did. I exploited their vulnerability for my gain.
But also, and your own, I would say as well. You touched on ideas of visibility and invisibility, and you can maybe tell us a little bit about Mirren and Jamie among the characters in your book, Jenny. But when we first meet Mirren, she's in the British Museum, not the British Library. I love the note about that. But she says, and you're right, she had that odd feeling of having nowhere particular to be at that moment, nobody who would miss her if she wasn't there, even surrounded by millions of people. There's still that idea of who sees us and who doesn't, and when we feel alone, even in huge crowds.
Yeah, I think that's quite characteristic of cities.
Yeah,
though, and it's kind of one of the things people love about cities is you can pass anonymously and just do whatever it is you want to do, but also that's, but also if you do nothing at all, it might take quite a while for anybody to notice. Whereas the village where I live, if you don't turn up for your kind of croissants on, then what's wrong? There'll be a Facebook post. So, it's kind of nice, the kind of combination of those two things. And it's nice to kind of flick between them.
Yeah, the quiet.
And also, I think it's quite often not quite the case when people are like, oh, nobody's thinking about me. Your mum probably is. You just don't want to ring her.
Yeah, quite. Or she's loved too much by her family. Is one of the jokey problems.
Your great aunt would love a visit. She's been sitting in that home for 3 years. Of course, what she means is I want some exciting, young, cool people to pay attention to.
Quite, exactly.
And I think that's a reasonable desire.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about Mirren and also the adventure that she finds herself upon. It's so perfect at this time of year. This is why we love your book so much. And this season, I spent over the weekend with it and just felt the pace of it, the time that it takes, but also the reassurance, all right, that no matter what happens or doesn't, we want to be with them.
Oh, thank you. Well, I wanted to write a kind of adventure thing that I like to read at Christmas time. So it's very jolly, and she kind of heads off north on the sleeper, which has this kind of amazing private carriage, which, by the way, I think is a brilliant idea, and the sleeper should totally do it.
Listen, it was so convincing. I was like, maybe there is this secret carriage.
I do not understand. If they had one there, right, and all those Instagrammers, they had to pay like 20 grand to do it or something, they would, right, because people are idiots. And so, that is my gift to Caledonian Sleeper. So it is a kind of, it's not, a piece of chunky realism, Nicola. But I did very much want to write something fun about books and crumbling old castles and so on. And it wasn't for a couple of weeks or a little bit of time before somebody read an early proof and went, "You've written a famous five." And I went, oh. Well, there isn't a dog. Oh, there is a dog in it. So it is a very jolly romp, I think.
But also it is an adventure.
It's an adventure, yes.
There's something about the past and about memory in both of your books, which is fascinating, in as much as there's not a great deal of it. There are secrets, there are perhaps curiosities, there are stories to be found out or found. And, despite the fact that when we meet Ray and June, they're in their early and mid-70s, we don't get a huge amount of past. We know that June has been married 3 times, but only by the numbers of her husbands. Was it important not to delve too much and to focus on the present day?
It really was, and that was my instinct, but it was also backed up by just a little bit of research in terms of reading into Love in Later Life, where people are quite concerned with the here and now. because I think there's a whole school of literature about important books or people sitting in boarding houses in Eastbourne ruminating on their past, and I thought, okay, I don't want to write a ruminatory book. I don't even know if ruminatory is a word, but it is now. I wanted to write a book about people who are quite aware of the time span, quite aware of their place or not their place in life. So if they meet and they are gently curious about each other, they're more concerned with what will we do on Tuesday as opposed to dealing with a reckoning of the past. The past does come and go, but it actually was, and I'm really glad you noticed that it was a conscious decision to keep it out, because I wanted it to be about let's go for a walk. Let's see what we're going to do today.
Yeah, exactly. Just look in front of us, even if that's immediately in front of us. And pasts in your book, Jenny, are fascinating as well, because Mirren finds herself in a situation where she can't delve into someone's past. Okay, now if we meet someone, if we immediately take to someone in whatever way, romantic or otherwise, you want to know everything about them, you go online, you basically stalk them. She can't do that because you take a mobile phone signal out of it. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because you forget how to get to know people like that. That's what we had to do.
Yeah, I do worry about my kids, my teenage kids. And, there's quite a lot of voice note leaving and it's quite a kind of lengthy. Yeah. I suppose like in the past, you don't send each other very long letters. So I guess this is the kind of equivalent. But, the one thing... Actually, what you said, Andrew, I thought was very interesting because, I don't think people in their 70s sit around all day reminiscing on the secrets of the past. They're just they just want to know what they're doing on Tuesday, and I think that's exactly how life works for everyone. I am now something that young people consider to be quite a grey age. Of course, it's not how you think at all, and I guess that never changes and never will change. But that said, whenever I get asked at events and stuff, where'd you get your ideas from? I always say, it's a really stock answer, but I always say, if I was to ask you, or say to you, tell me about your crazy family, we'd be here all day.
Yes.
Because everybody's family is full of secrets. Everybody's family is mental. Everybody has a cousin that was raised by someone they thought was their mum, but it was their sister. But there's one of those that everybody's got somebody turned up to a funeral, and then there was another family. This is a universal experience, and everyone's got it, so it's fertile ground for fiction.
The moment, and it could be any moment, I think you say at one point, you go somewhere, you don't know someone that exists, and then suddenly you do. And that can completely upturn your life in as gentle or as a dramatic a way at any point, on any given day, at any given age, really.
Well, there's an awful lot of talk nowadays in the way people meet each other online about this is what I want, this is who I am, these are my attributes, I'm looking to match with you upon these attributes. But real love is actually about surprise. Real love is about something that doesn't exist at 11:45 on a Tuesday, and at 10 to 11 on the Tuesday, it might exist because you've met someone who you're curious enough about to want to be with. So love is about surprises. And that's why most love stories do depend on that. If it's a story about a couple meeting, they do depend on that first meeting, and usually it goes wrong or whatever, and there's all sorts of cliches around it. But there does have to be an element of, this is so new to me that I want to change my life for you or around you or that kind of thing. So the surprise element is huge, and that's why they're actually quite fun to write, because you get to fall in love, you get to experience it, you get to have that experience with your characters. I've never written a break. Well, actually, I have. I wrote a book about Oscar Wilde's marriage to Constance Wilde, and that was pretty sad. And that was I had a pretty grim time writing that book, because it was about people being very, very unhappy, and had a much, much nicer time writing Best Friends because they were falling in love. Yeah.
Does that chime with you, Jenny, across your books, but just focusing in on this and focusing on the relationships? And there are questions over quite a few of the relationships within the gang that we meet on the train, and certainly in the castle and around the castle, and the different types of love there as well.
Yeah, I think so. Goodness, despite the fact that I write a lot of romantic comedy, I swear I have got no concept of who will stay together and who will break up.
Really?
And neither does anybody else. we have all seen people go into relationships and marriages that you thought, oh yeah, they're so alike, they've got this, they've got that it imploded spectacularly. And then we've all seen people get married that you almost went and, when they said, does anyone object, you were quite tempted to put your hand up and go, oh my God, you crazy lunatics. You're rolling along perfectly weirdly 40 years later. So, I've kind of lost... I married a sailor from New Zealand that I met on a boat. Much to my, mother's absolute horror. And here we are, a quarter of the century down the line. So, I've given up predicting, and I don't think it has got much to do. I'm lucky enough to have never had to do the whole app experience, but that it doesn't actually have that much to do with whether you both like the same pop songs or music or stuff. It doesn't even matter, I'd noticed, if you have the same politics, which you would think would be extremely important. It doesn't. It really relies on lots of little bits of crap, like, are you quite good at taking the bins out?
We know someone who is.
Of course, yeah. But so that's interesting to me, that actually this idea of compatibility, I don't think is what people think it is.
Yeah. Do you know within your own books how the relationships are going to pan out then? Because that's a different thing. Sometimes you can be surprised even by...
generally. I mean, other characters come in and surprise. And there's some things... I wrote a series about a Syrian refugee moving to an island a fictional island off the coast of Scotland. And it's my one series that has really... Normally I stop them at 3 because of the whole library situation. I don't want people not being able to get books in sequence. But that one runs on because the story just swept everything before it, and there was absolutely no way we were getting out there before it was finished. And so, sometimes.
Yeah. Did you have Ray and June's quiet and not so quiet adventures mapped out before you sat down?
I did, but I threw away the map.
Really?
I've got a background in script development and screenwriting, so I don't really, leave the house without writing an outline or I like to, know what I'm going to write that day. Yeah, exactly.
Pieces of string.
I do have pieces of string and notes to self, and I can pull that stuff out of my arse pretty easily. However, and I had an outline for Best Friends, and it was fresh enough to make it interesting for me. And I thought, this doesn't feel like a formulaic love story. But I got 3/4 of the way through my existing outline, and I wrote and what I had drafted was quite faithful to the outline. And then I got to a certain point, and I went, okay, something else is going to happen now. And it is the point at which people go, oh, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't see that coming, and I went, nor did I.
Really?
And there's, it's quite a gentle book, as I've indicated, but a big thing happens about 3/4 of the way through, and then another big thing happens, and it was a surprise to me, and it was a bit of a risk as well. But so I outlined it, but then it only took me so far. And a really good thing, and it's a taboo in writing, is that I changed my mind. I wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
But the ending is... it is a quiet, happy, reflective ending, and I'd be very happy to say here and now that nobody dies in this book.
Sure.
It's you think old people, oh no, I can't read it, someone's going to die, and nobody does. There are hospitals, but nobody dies.
Yeah. I'm allowing you to say as much as you would like about the story, because yes, in both books I would say, and I think that's a lovely thing about. I speak to crime writers and they'll speak about it a lot, and whatever, feel-good fiction, romantic fiction, comedy fiction, whatever it is, that storytelling element, tales, the way in which I can go into these books and absolutely love the pace, the characters, the setting, and there are these very dramatic moments in both of the books in different ways, and yet I'm kind of reassured that I want to still be part of it. I don't want to go, I can't look any further. There's this sort of reassurance that everything, in one way or another, might be not as you expect, right? Yes. It's going to be all right. Is that, as a writer, are you drawn to that? Because certainly as a reader, I can happily take longer over every word, knowing that it's okay.
Oh, it's that beautiful Shakespeare love quote, is it? And it all ends up, well, he says, how? Nobody knew. It's a mystery. That's a great writer's film, that film. Yeah, I write really during the pandemic, I think, because quite a lot of, without kind of blowing my own trumpet or whatever, but quite a lot of people got in touch saying things were really tough.
Yeah.
And one of the things that helped them was reading. And one of the things that helped them was books and my books, obviously, if they were getting in touch with me. And so kind of since then, I was like, all right, okay, I'm just going to go. And I did write one, I really liked it, about a couple or two people that were separated and didn't meet until the end. Then I was going to kill him off just before they got the chance to meet. So they walked past each other in the street and not recognised each other. They were both healthcare people, and then he would get called to some emergency, and then she would have to talk to him on the phone, but she wouldn't see him. Okay. Oh, and my agent just was like, nah. Really? It's like, we're going to burn this, and no one must ever hear of it, and we will salt the earth, and that was the end of that. Yeah.
Really?
Well, I see her, at the time I was like, oh, but I see her point. Just what you say, I think if you're going to pick up one of my books, you should feel jollier afterwards than you did before. I think that's a fair trait.
Yeah, but that's not to detract from, over so many of your books. That's not that you shy away from, emotions or mental health or people feeling displaced, or everything can be in there. And as you say, Andrew, even just this aspect of actually going, no, this is what life is like. This is what love is like. You literally never know at any age, on any day, how it's going to strike you, for better or worse. Ray falls in love, as you famously say early on, about 6 times a day, but this is something different.
But he's never really been in love, and in a way with someone who's in love with him at the same time as he's in love with them, and that was a bit of a problem for some people. I had a meeting with a film producer at the very when the book came out in the summer, and he said, "So, okay, we want to do this with you, but I've got a problem with Ray," and I'm going, "Oh, okay, well, what's your problem?" He goes, "Oh, he's obviously got some kind of issues. He's had some kind of breakdown. He hasn't been in relationships." And I go, "Some people, it just passes them by."
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with him. And it's safe to say the meeting didn't end very well, and we're not doing the project together. But so there is a sense of things pass people by, and I mean I don't mind. I mean, Best Friends is an upbeat book, but it's a book with loneliness buried right down at the bottom of it. And Jenny's books are upbeat books, but I read a book like Meet Me at the Seaside Cottages, and there's a lot of kind of hurt behind it.
Yeah.
Like the characters are carrying stuff, but they are. I don't mind calling Best Friends a story of wish fulfillment. I had a conversation recently with a kind of an important book person, and he was going, well, Best Friends isn't a rom-com, and I'm going, actually, it is a rom-com, and it is a story of wish fulfillment, but that doesn't.
All stories are wish fulfillment stories.
Yeah.
Look at crime. That's all. Everybody thinks that they're the mysterious maverick, or James Bond, or that's really, or going to space.
That's so true.
Most stories.
And the wishes are maybe difficult to be fulfilled, and it takes them a while to get there. And it might be that that the happy ending isn't necessarily it's the ending of the story. It's not the ending of their lives. So it was very important to me to. I mean, I read for company. And I write for company, and I wrote for the company of those characters, and I go looking for books. Okay, if I'm going to spend 3 or 4 days in the company of somebody, I want to enjoy their company. It doesn't mean they have to be sympathetic people, but it's the company.
You're so right, though, about the fact that it can be happy. It can, but at the same time, there can be this melancholy. And in the Secret Christmas Library, there's all these other stories in the past that sort of come to light. And what's so lovely about them is, again, it's that sense of not wanting or not feeling alone. That there are people there we might know about them, or not even in our own pasts. But that mystery, if you like, was a wonderful thing. Did you know everything about the backstory of the family?
No. I reverse engineered it as these things become apparent. But I tell you what I did. Well, the 2 things really. One was that I went up to do the John O'Groats Festival because they asked me. And I thought, that's cool. Never been up there before. And then I got to Inverness, and the sat-nav still said about 4.5 hours. I was like, all right. But coming back down, of course, it's beautiful, that coast, but the amount of castles.
Yeah, okay.
There's so many. And from a distance they look unbelievable, and then you get up close and they're just going to shit, because they're so huge and the elements are so strong. So that was a kind of big thing.
Yeah.
But then the other thing that I find interesting about these places is people knowing their relatives. We know an astonishing amount about Prince Charles's great-great-great-grandmother, and that seems mad to me, because none of us know, or well, unless you're kind of slightly posh, whereas ours were probably just in a field somewhere. And so that's interesting to me, that these big families that have had money and lost money, and they're all kind of slightly miserable anyway because of that reason, also know an awful lot about themselves and see their faces going back and back. I can't even imagine what that's like, and actually I'm not terribly sure it's good for you. I think, whereas if generations that get a bit of a blank slate and a bit of a free pass, there's my family legacy is literally me and my brothers just begging my dad not to leave us these DVDs.
You lived away from Scotland for a long time, and obviously your books are set in various places, but particularly in Scotland. Do you see it differently having come back? Do you have a different affection, perspective?
Yeah, I think it's really common, Andrew, you may share this, that if you have ever lived in a different country from the country you were born, you have a lot in common with other people who have done that, because it changes you so irrevocably. And you will always be a part in one place and a part in another place. Even, as in my case, if you come back to because we lived in France and we lived in England and America and the Netherlands. But we've been back here for 10 years, but you still are seeing it through different eyes all the time, which has positives, a lot of positives. I mean, God, as a kid growing up, of course, you're so spoiled, and like people are like, oh, it's beautiful, you're like, yawn, you can't see it. It's just the water that you swim in, and then you come back and go, oh my God, this really is. And because I have to travel a lot with the job, and I'm constantly coming across new corners that are just fantastic. So yes, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. You see, and it had changed a lot in the 20 years that I'd been away. It had become this very sure of itself country. That it wasn't, there wasn't a sense now that the country would just tip and everybody would piss off to London, that there was tons of people that I kind of half remembered me, because I worked in like the Traverse, I worked for the Gilded Balloon and all that stuff. Edinburgh kind of culture stuff, and they were like, hiya.
Yeah, you'd never been away.
Yeah,
that's a lovely thing. You touched on the fact that both the characters who directly or indirectly, inspired the ideas of Ray and June were around about Glasgow and Queen's Park in Glasgow. Was the book, however, always going to be set? Did it have to be set in this suburb of Dublin, and also the suburb of Dublin that's on the rise, even though perhaps June and Ray aren't on the up?
It's very affluent. I began the book. I was setting it in Queen's Park in Glasgow, and I couldn't. My sentences sound Irish. It's not about dialogue as such, in terms of the way the sentences land on the page, and I think like an Irish person. Although my next book, which we're not talking about, is partly set in Scotland, and I think I've pulled that off, I hope.
Wow. Okay.
But this book, I started it in Glasgow, and I thought I found myself doing an impression of a Scot, even though I've lived in Scotland 25 years, and I do make, we're talking about the St Andrews Book Festival, and I make claims to be a Scottish author. The sentences were landing in an Irish way. But I'd never actually, I've always written books about Irish people living abroad, because I've got a similar background to you, Jenny, that I've been an Irish person living elsewhere. So I set the book in the village where I spent my early and teenage years, which is Sandy Cove, Glasgow and Dublin, which is really, really, really affluent. And Ray and June are the characters who are working class people living in not just an affluent village, but a village where it's sort of where Bono takes Barack Obama for a pint. It's obscenely like the display, and I don't even know if there is a Scottish equivalent, because Scotland hasn't gone through that sort of the extremes that Ireland has had. So they are very much, they're from
hydro.
The what?
Grief hydro.
all that kind of stuff. So there isn't the Bangor Creeve hydro at all, or even the Dunblane hydro, but it's very much this village where every house looks like an embassy. Yeah. So they're from there, although June has moved there 40 years previously. they feel like outsiders where they're from because they can't afford to spend £9 on a cappuccino. They can't afford, sourdough bread. They're yellow sticker people. So I wanted to get that across. But I have been building. Best Friends is my 4th book. I've been building up to writing a Scottish book, and it is coming. And it doesn't. And it's a book in which I don't feel like I'm doing an impression of a Scottish person. I've got a way of telling the story. The sentences landed in that grandiose way, but they landed in a way. Okay, that feels true. But that's the next book. So Best Friends is a book set in Dublin, written by an author who doesn't know whether he's Irish or Scottish on any given day. But I'm here talking to you about Scotland. So today, despite my accent,
apart from a passport control,
yes. Well, I can glide through a custom, but I sound Irish, but I feel Scottish.
I'm fascinated by the fact that even you could sense that your sentences were landing Irish, because it's like none of us can really hear our own accent, right? So that must be, to be able to discern that is fascinating.
I think it's about Irish people are quite indirect. I was writing to an Irish colleague at the university I work in the other day, and I was asking him a question to which the answer was going to be no, and he went, "Oh, Andrew, it's going to be tight." Oh, which was his way of saying, "No, don't ask me." And a Scottish colleague would go, "No, that can't happen." But so there is an Irish way of seeing the world, and perhaps there is a Scottish way of seeing the world, and of course you want to upend that and subvert it. But this came out in an Irish way.
I love that, because again, the characters are Glasgow in one way, and yet I cannot imagine them being anywhere else but the place you take us to, and the seasons you take us to as well. I think the seasons are important in both of the books.
I was going to ask you, Jen, do you... I wrote Best Friends during the summer, and I set it during the summer. So do you, when you were writing a Christmas book, were you writing that by the sea in July, or were you writing that?
No, I always write it at this time of year, because that's why I only do one every 2 years. Stop ruining everybody's Christmas. But yeah, until the kind of smell comes in and hits you, and until you've seen a kid throw up something blue at the corner of Edinburgh's Christmas, you don't, it's all the little things that you forget exactly what time the music starts, and I suddenly went, oh right, I better get the cake on, and so no, I feel that you've got to be a little bit authentic about it. I always do it at Christmas time when the music's going, and it's cold.
It very much feels it. I mean, even it's a very, very bright day here in Edinburgh today, but it's got that wintry Christmas,
Celsius.
Right? Exactly. It's absolutely there. And reading it at that time, because there's always the stories about all the old Christmas number ones, Slade and Merry Christmas Everybody, and they're filming it on Top of the Pops, and it's a blazing sunny day, and they've got the kind of fake snow. Yeah. But I guess especially when you're immersing us in the world for so long, but also I would hope for you as a writer, you enjoy it more if you're in the spirit of it yourself.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I just think it just makes your life a lot easier, because you forget in the summer, is that gorse? You know what I mean? It's just like, look at the height of the hedgerows. They're that high in July.
Yes.
Okay, it cuts out a lot of unnecessary Wikipedia nonsense.
I have another theory as well in that, because I was thinking, coming here to talk about my book, A Summer Book, and Jenny's book, A Christmas Book, I think there are 2 times of the year when people do their reading.
Yeah.
There is between, in between the dog days between Christmas and New Year, when maybe, we've got in the old days when we got our book voucher. So I think people read at Christmas time, and they read on their summer holidays.
Summer holidays.
So I think there are, and we're all reading on the phones going here and there, but we tend to be looking at, things that aren't literature or books or whatever. But I think there are 2 times a year when people read Christmas and those 2 weeks in July. They've
also got sort of magical properties those time as well, because they're not quite real life for us in a way, right? And so we want to be swept up in that a little bit more. But I would also say there is the flip side, which is, reading Best Friends. Now, there's a looking forward to the new season as well. And even in the Secret Christmas Library, there's a little bit of a look forward to spring as well.
Well, it's funny, it depends where you are, because obviously in countries where we publish that don't celebrate Christmas.
Sure.
So in, Arabic and in Turkish and whatever, it's the secret, it's just the Winter Library, which I think is quite nice. Winter Library, but also some other places. Italy also calls them all winter books, which means that they can sell them right through February and all of that. So it's quite nice to kind of push it through into. But yeah, it is like one year we had, I think it was the Christmas Bookshop, and it was being published in the US, but printed in, I guess, China. Mm. And it got stuck on that boat in the Suez Canal. Do you remember that? Yeah. It wasn't on that boat, but it was on like a boat behind it. Mm. And of course, you know, nobody buys these books on the 26th of December. So it's like every day it was the update about whether the books were making it out or not. They just made it under the wire. They not only did they just make it under the wire, it was brilliant because we had a bit of pent-up demand. Yeah, and that was got us onto the New York Times list, and it was all very exciting.
That is wonderful, yeah. High drama, never mind the stories within the pages, the stories of the books actually getting out there. That's fascinating.
The reason that Christmas is such a fertile ground for fiction anyway, apart from heightened emotions and family nonsense, is the ticking bomb aspect. You know, there is you've got this plot motor wound up, ready to go. You know,
Ray and June and their wonderful adventures also shed light on our day-to-day existences and some truths of them, and not everybody loves a picnic, and it's okay to say that, Andrew.
Well, especially if you live in a village where it costs you €75 to buy a picnic where there's actually nothing to eat. A lot of because they are, you know, economic outsiders, if you like, they can't afford. I mean, the village where it's set is full of really nice places to go that they can't afford to go into. So they are, in a way, I called it the book Best Friends because it's almost like a teenage love. Sure. Because they're doing the thing that teenagers do, which is kind of wander around and hang around. Yeah. And there is later on in the book quite a big moment where they go into a place and pay for a cup of tea. Mm-hmm. So there is that feeling of they're having to sort of conjure, and I think it is quite romantic, the fact that they're doing kind of outdoorsy kind of sort of made up kind of things. And it is, you know, it's very much a summer book. Yeah. Partly because I wanted the joke of having a character called June and having June is glad to see the back of June and things like that.
And a ray, of course, of sunshine or otherwise.
Indeed. But there's also the feeling of, I remember as a kid, being put to bed at 8:30 at night, and like there's still 2 hours of daylight, and there's a couple of sad points in the book where they're apart from each other, and June is going to bed early, and she's hearing the kids playing in the street. But she's in her bed at 8:30 at night, and she's feeling this is I was better off before I fell for this person. So there is that feeling of summer is expansive and full of promise, but summers can also involve a lot of disappointment, and you feel like everyone else is out at the beach, everyone else is having this great time, but I'm
spending a lot of time waiting for it as well.
Yeah, you do indeed.
But again, that idea of expectation, you're going to have your best summer ever, you're going to have your best Christmas ever. That's exactly it. Again, Mirren feels that very stacked up against her, doesn't she?
Yeah, I mean, that's the world we live in. Yeah. But the summer one, actually, that summer thing really rings a bell with me, because I love living in Scotland from June till December. Love it. Every month there's something cool and there's something lovely. Whereas January through to May can be a bit of an uphill struggle. It seems an awfully long segment of your life to be waiting to walk out the house in a t-shirt.
Especially given, ironically, the days are shorter, quote unquote, for a longer time of it. But they're just darker. They're not shorter. There's less time to get out and about it. You mentioned there just finally, Andrew, that you were speaking to someone book related. I got the impression when they said, you said it's a rom-com and they said it's not a rom-com. Were they suggesting that you were in some way, that there was something disparaging about it being a rom-com? Were they saying, oh, no, because it always infuriates me that anything that seemed to be feel good or perhaps romantic or perhaps funny is somehow not serious fiction. And I wondered if you saying a rom-com, this person was like, well, you can't call it that because it's, you know.
I think they thought they were being nice. I think they thought they were being cool. Yeah. And I don't really...
That's worse.
And I don't really... Well, maybe I do. I'd like to be somewhere near the front of the bookshop, but I don't really care where in the bookshop my books go. Yeah. And I love the rom-com genre. I think, you know, and it's having... Maybe on TV more than anywhere else, it's having, you know, shows like Nobody Wants This and Platonic, it's having a real resurgence, and it's a really, really dynamic and mobile form because love stories have so many different shapes.
Yes.
As long as they're, you know, love stories can last for a morning, an afternoon, they can last for 50 years, they can never happen. So it's always changing.
I don't want to give any spoilers, but every type of a love story that you just touched upon in there is within the Secret Christmas Library one way or another. There are so many different stories that you want to burrow into, including those castles. But just finally, let us wind up, because we all have to get our work done, and then we all have to get to London for the St Andrews Book Festival, which is going to be fab. Have you got any plans for any reading over Christmas, as much as any writing?
I do. Thanks for asking. I'm going to be in Italy. I'm treating myself to 6 weeks in northern Italy this Christmas. So I'm thinking I'm going to read fancy Italian. I'm thinking I'm going to read Italo Calvino, and just to keep it
nice.
I'm going to reread a short story of his called The Adventure of a Married Couple, which is from a book called Difficult Loves, which is about a couple who work shifts. And they never see each other, but they both climb into a bed that has been recently vacated by the other. So she climbs into the bed that is warm from him, and they both sleep on the same side of the bed because they occupy each other's side of the bed. So even though it feels like I know the story very well, I'm going to reread that because I've just promised you I would.
Oh, well, and I'll hold you to that, especially about Italo Calvino. And on top of that, I just love that, you know, the Italian theme resonates throughout Best Friends as well, is all that I'll say. What about you, Jenny?
Well, is it a Bruins year?
I know, is it a Bruins or a Nurwilly?
Or is it a Nurwilly year? I've lost track, because if it's a Bruins year, yay. It's a Nurwilly year. And so I will have to see what comes through the door. But actually, I'm not a seasonal reader. I'm a fairly constant reader. So, do you know, it's funny, actually. You can cut this out if it's very boring. But you know, when you were talking about writing in Irish, did you read Glorious Exploits?
I know about it. I haven't read it.
Oh my God, it's like an ancient Greek thing.
Ferdy Lennon.
Yes, that's right, but written by an Irish guy, as if it's just about a great bunch of lads. Oh my God, it's so fantastic. I've been forcing it on everyone. So yeah, I'll just carry on with the kind of happy reading.
I just think I'm so grateful, because we're one of these families. Once Halloween's out the way, well, this is not fair. My youngest daughter and I are absolutely Christmas movies, Christmas cooking all the way. My husband and our elder daughter are like, keep it, it's too much. So I was just thrilled to be able to go, it's absolutely time, and immerse I want it all. I want all the festive reading. I want all the love. I want all the adventures.
I'm very much. Mince pies are out, and Mariah is on, and off we go.
Well, that's just in time. We'll just get back on the train from the St Andrews Book Festival. All back here from Mince Pies.
Awesome.
Thanks again to the lovely Andrew Meehan and Jenny Colgan. You can catch Andrew, incidentally, at Airdrie Library next week, November the 25th. That's as part of Book Week Scotland. And yes, you can catch Andrew and Jenny in conversation together at St Andrews Book Festival in London, Friday, November the 28th. That all takes place at St Columba's Church in Knightsbridge. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be at the festival on the Saturday, November the 29th. I'll be in conversation with literary livewires Irvin Welsh and John Niven. We'll be getting together at 8 p.m. And before that with Claire Mitchell and Zoe Ventitose, aka The Witches of Scotland. That's the same day at 5 p.m. We would love you to join us. I'll put ticket links wherever I can, or just search for St Andrews Book Festival online. You can listen back to previous episodes of A Kick Up the Arts with various other guests from this year's festival, including Val McDermott, Ambrose Parry, Justin Curry, Michael Peterson and Natalie Jane Clark, and you can see them all in the Big Smoke too. What a party we're going to have down south. Back here in Scotland, incidentally, I've got one more live event this year, so let's call that a Christmas party. Why not? It's at the Stand in Glasgow. It's on the afternoon of December the 11th with the absolute dream that is Teenage Fan Club's Norman Blake. We'll chat about all sorts, his life, his work, his favourite Scottish records, films and books, and he's going to play us some live songs too. I cannot wait. What are you waiting for? Get some tickets. You can get them via akickupthearts.org. They're literally the price of a coffee if you use the promo code AKUTA, A-K-U-T-A. Don't say I didn't tell you. Thank you as always for listening, for sharing, for getting in touch. Keep doing all of that, and I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.